Oh, Lord, it's good to be here with you today. Imagine this. You're talking to someone and they just told you about their crazy weekend trip to the mountains, right? And before they can even finish their story, you jump in with your own mountain story that was somehow more intense, more dangerous, or just flat out better. Conversation murdered in cold blood, and you didn't even realize you were holding the weapon. I used to do this all the time, like constantly. I'd be sitting there with a friend who's telling me about their stressful week at work, and instead of just being there with them, my brain would immediately start scanning my memory banks for a story that was worse. Oh, you had a rough week? Let me tell you about the time I worked 72 hours straight and survived on nothing but coffee and regret. It's like my mouth had this autopilot mode that I couldn't turn off. And every conversation became this weird contest that nobody signed up for. Here's the thing that really messed me up. I genuinely thought I was being relatable. I thought that sharing my own similar experience was how you show someone you understand them. But here's what I learned after years of awkward silences and people suddenly remembering they had somewhere else to be. Conversation is not a competition. When you treat it like one, when you're constantly trying to one-up or redirect attention back to yourself, you're basically telling the other person that their experience doesn't matter as much as yours. Let me tell you about the exact moment I realized how bad this was. I was hanging out with this guy, let's call him Mark, and he was telling me about how he barely slept the night before because his kid was sick. And I, being the absolute genius that I was, immediately jumped in with this. Dude, that's nothing. I once stayed awake for 3 days straight during finals week. Like, what was I thinking? Mark's sitting there worried about his kid, and I'm over here bragging about my poor life choices in college. The look on his face, man, it was like watching someone realize they'd made a terrible mistake talking to me. And honestly, he had. So I started digging into this, reading everything I could find about why we do this. Turns out it's hardwired into us to some degree. We're social creatures, and we've evolved to care deeply about our status in the group. When someone shares a story, especially a dramatic or impressive one, there's this subconscious part of your brain that sees it as a threat to your social standing. It's primitive stuff, like caveman brain logic. If they have the group's attention and admiration, that means you don't. So your brain goes into defense mode and tries to reclaim that spotlight. But here's the kicker. This instinct is completely destroying your actual social standing. Because while you think you're impressing people with your better stories and more intense experiences, what you're actually doing is making them feel unheard and unimportant. Nobody likes the person who always has to go bigger. Nobody wants to share vulnerable moments with someone who's just waiting for their turn to perform. I want you to think about the last conversation you had where someone did this to you. Maybe you were excited about a promotion, and they immediately started talking about their own career achievements. Or you mentioned feeling anxious about something, and they launched into a speech about their anxiety that was so much worse. How did that make you feel? Probably pretty crappy, right? Like your experience just got minimized and dismissed. That's exactly what you're doing to others when you fall into the competition trap. The fix isn't complicated, but it does require you to fight against that autopilot mode. The solution is a complete attitude shift. You have to genuinely believe that the conversation is not about you. It's about connection, understanding, and making the other person feel heard. When someone shares something with you, your job is not to match it, top it, or redirect it. Your job is to be curious about their experience. Here's what this looks like in practice. Next time someone tells you a story, instead of immediately thinking about your own related story, ask them a question about theirs. If they mention a stressful situation, don't say you've been more stressed. Ask them how they're handling it. If they're excited about something, don't pivot to your own excitement. Ask them what specifically makes them so pumped about it. This is the difference between competing and connecting. I started practicing this, and honestly, it felt weird at first. There were these moments of silence where normally I would have jumped in with my story, and instead, I just sat there asking questions. But then something crazy happened. conversations got deeper. People started opening up to me more. They'd share things they wouldn't normally share because they actually felt heard instead of judged or competed with. Let me be clear about something though. Sharing your own experiences is not always bad. There's a time and place for reciprocal storytelling, but the key is in the intent and the timing. If someone's in the middle of sharing something vulnerable or important to them, that's not your cue to perform. Wait until they're finished. Wait until they feel fully heard. Then, and only then, if it's relevant and genuinely helpful, you can share your own experience. But even then, frame it as a way to support their story, not overshadow it. The competition trap is sneaky because it doesn't feel like you're being a jerk. It feels like you're participating, relating, being part of the conversation. But trust me, from the other person's perspective, it feels completely different. They came to you with something real, and you turned it into a contest they didn't want to enter. The moment you make that shift, the moment you stop seeing conversations as opportunities to prove yourself and start seeing them as opportunities to understand someone else, everything changes. Your relationships get stronger, your conversations get richer, and people actually want to talk to you because they know you're not going to hijack the moment. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about something we've all done but nobody wants to admit: fake listening. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Someone's telling you a story, you're nodding at all the right moments, maybe throwing in a few uh-huhs and yes, but inside your head, you're planning dinner, rehearsing an argument you had 3 days ago, or wondering if that weird noise your car made this morning means you're about to drop $2,000 on repairs. I got so good at this, it was scary. Like, I perfected the art of looking engaged while being completely checked out. Eye contact, check. Occasional head nods, check. Strategic verbal confirmations, check. Meanwhile, my brain was in a completely different zip code. And here's the messed up part. I thought I was being nice. I thought I was doing people a favor by at least pretending to care instead of just walking away or telling them I wasn't interested. The moment I realized how bad this was came during a date that I'm still embarrassed about to this day. This woman was telling me about something that clearly mattered a lot to her. Something about her family or her job. I honestly can't even remember because I wasn't listening. I was too busy thinking about what clever thing I was going to say next to impress her. She finished talking, looked at me expectantly, and I just smiled and said something like, "That's really interesting." Dead silence. She looked at me like I'd just insulted her grandmother. Turns out she'd asked me a direct question at the end of her story, and my generic response made it painfully obvious I hadn't heard a single word. So I did what any reasonable person who just destroyed their dating life would do. I went down a research rabbit hole. I found this stuff about a psychologist named Carl Rogers, who basically revolutionized how we think about listening. Rogers talked about this concept he called active listening, but it's not what most people think. It's not about nodding your head or maintaining eye contact or any of that surface level crap. It's about actually being present in the moment and genuinely trying to understand what the other person is experiencing. Here's what blew my mind. Fake listening is incredibly easy to pull off in the short term, but it destroys relationships over time. Because here's the thing, even if people can't consciously tell you're not listening in the moment, they feel it. There's this disconnect that happens when you're performing listening instead of actually doing it. They walk away from the conversation feeling somehow unsatisfied, like something was missing, even if they can't put their finger on exactly what. I started paying attention to when I was fake listening, and it was way more often than I wanted to admit. Anytime I was tired, stressed, or honestly just not that interested in the topic, my brain would switch to autopilot mode. I'd put on the listening face, but internally, I was a million miles away. And the worst part? The people talking to me deserved better than that. They were sharing pieces of their lives, their thoughts, their experiences, and I was giving them the emotional equivalent of a participation trophy. Let me tell you about the difference between fake listening and real listening, because this changed everything for me. Fake listening is when you're waiting for your turn to talk. You're hearing words, sure, but you're not processing meaning. You're not curious about what they're saying. You're just holding space until it's socially acceptable for you to jump in with your response that you've been crafting for the last 30 seconds. Real listening, the Carl Rogers kind, is when you're genuinely trying to understand their perspective, even if you disagree with it. Here's a simple test I started using on myself. After someone finishes talking, can I accurately summarize back to them what they just said in a way that makes them feel understood? Not just repeat their words, but capture the actual meaning and emotion behind what they shared? If the answer is no, I wasn't really listening. I was performing. The technique that saved me is something Rogers called reflective listening, but I'm going to give it to you in a way that doesn't sound like a therapy textbook. When someone tells you something, especially something important or emotional, instead of immediately responding with your own thoughts or trying to fix their problem, you pause. You take a second to actually absorb what they said. Then you reflect back to them what you heard, not word for word, but the essence of it. Something like it sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed by that situation. Or so what you're saying is you're excited, but also nervous about this new opportunity. I know what you're thinking. That sounds mechanical. That sounds like therapy speak. But here's the magic. When you do this genuinely, when you're actually trying to understand rather than just going through the motions, it doesn't come across as scripted. It comes across as someone actually paying attention. And the response you get from people is insane. They light up. They open up more. They feel heard in a way that most people rarely experience. Let me be brutally honest about something. Real listening is hard. It requires you to shut off your internal monologue, set aside your own agenda, and genuinely focus on another human being. In a world where we're constantly distracted, constantly thinking about the next thing, constantly trying to optimize and multitask, real listening feels almost radical. But that's exactly why it's so powerful. Here's what I want you to do. Next time someone starts telling you something, anything, make a conscious decision to actually listen. Not perform listening, not fake engagement. Actually be there. Notice when your mind starts to wander, and when it does, gently bring it back. Don't beat yourself up about it, just redirect. Ask questions that show you're tracking with them. Reflect back what you're hearing. See what happens. The fake listener problem isn't about being a bad person. It's about being a distracted person in a distracting world. But the solution is simple, even if it's not easy. Show up. Be present. Give people the gift of your actual attention, not just the performance of it. Because at the end of the day, being truly heard is one of the most powerful experiences a human being can have. And being the person who provides that, that's how you build real connection. That's how you stop killing conversations and start having ones that actually matter.